So I look at this one, I guess. All right, guys, we're doing something a little bit different today from our boats and occasionally bike stuff. Andrew's going on a trip here, and he's taking his vintage Toyota Tacoma out west. So we figured we'd do a video on that.
Yeah, I mean, this doesn't exactly fit in with the rest of our channel content, but this truck is an antique. It is 25 years old. My registration updates in December.
You get vintage plates at that
I will
point.
get
Historical vehicle tag.
I'll get a historical vehicle tag this year. So this is a 99 Tacoma, 4-wheel drive, 2.7, the inline 4, 3RZ engine for you.
I was gonna ask you what's the code name for that.
For you Toyota nerds. 323,000 miles on this thing. I've owned it for almost
as long as I've known you.
Almost 20 years at this point. As long as I've owned it, I've taken cross-country road trips, you know, national park tours, national forests. We're in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm driving this thing to Wyoming. It's not really my daily anymore. It pretty much sits for a whole year until I take a trip like this, and then I go and put 5,000 or 6,000, 7,000 miles on it in one rip.
To be honest, like most average people would see this thing and would honestly think that you're crazy for taking this thing so far across the country and then off-roading in it, not trailering it out there, driving it out there. They think you're nuts.
Never really lets you feel good, does it?
No.
Yeah, I mean, I probably wouldn't go buy an old truck and just start wheeling on it real hard, but I've owned this thing for 20 years. I've kept up the maintenance on it, and I feel comfortable in it. And I would drive this thing to California tomorrow, you know, without thinking twice.
You've driven it into Baja, right? You've driven it down through Baja.
I drove this thing all the way to Cabo.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a blast. So I guess the point is, you don't have to have a brand new vehicle to do stuff like that.
You don't need a $50,000 or $60,000 TRD off-road Tacoma, or God only knows how much the 4Runners are.
Or a Jeep Gladiator.
Or a Jeep. You don't need that stuff to go and enjoy the outdoors. And you can certainly do it in older, approaching antique vehicles like this just fine. But even with a newer vehicle, when you get out in some of those areas, you need to have a certain sense of self-sufficiency anyways, because it's just as easy to break down or have issues in a new vehicle once you get off the beaten path, right? So why don't you tell us some of the work that you're gonna do to this truck, some of the service and things you're gonna check over before you take it out there. And then I guess some of the stuff that you're gonna take along in case you have issues, things that you've learned over the years to just kind of stockpile and, you know, bring along with you.
Whether it's a new or an old vehicle, there's things you should do either way. New or old vehicle, I'm usually doing an oil change. I'm definitely checking the air filter. I'm checking all my tire pressures, and I'm checking, what else am I checking? Always check your spare. You don't ever want to be changing out your tire and your spare not be any good. So I usually check my spare, make sure it's aired up. I got an air compressor on board, so not a big deal if not. The first thing I ever did when I bought this truck though, and you can tell this thing's as old as my truck, this is a Haynes manual. This has everything in here that you need.
It's been well used.
This and YouTube are how I learned how to work on vehicles. So this will have, you know, all your maintenance, your maintenance schedule in here.
The best idea, to the point that you said though, is to actually have that with you, either the printed version, or if you use online videos or PDF version, download the stuff.
Download them.
Probably download the stuff and have it on your phone in case you run out of service, right?
When you're out in the middle of nowhere and you don't have service, you're gonna want the paper version or a downloaded PDF. I'm old school, I like having the paper version.
Seems simple, but I bet there's a lot of people that download the GPS maps and probably don't think to download that if they're used to just you getting it electronically, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also still carry a paper atlas as well.
Now with the air filter, you actually have a paper filter in it going out west and going out in dusty environments. You're not running K&N, right? I assume paper filter is the way you probably want to go. Like ATV world and dirt bike world, a K&N filter is the quickest way to destroy an engine running those things in like dust environments, so I just apply that logic here.
Yeah, the paper filters are cheap, easy to swap out, and you don't have to, and they filter better. Yeah, there's no reason to ever run a K&N filter. Yeah, I'd just rather swap out than have to service a K&N air filter. They're a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
One thing a lot of people don't think about is lubing your drivetrain So your axle and your CV joints and cardan joints and all that stuff, carrier bearings. On the old vehicles, they have Zerk points, so you can grease them. I usually do diff fluid and transfer case fluid. I usually do it on the front end of my trip, but Brock made a good point.
But the main concern when you're off-roading is that you get debris, or primarily that you get water in them, right? Do you really want, like when you're done with it, if you get water in there, do you really want to drive it back and have water sitting in there and settling out in your bearings and around your gears and creating rust? Go ahead and service it when you're done with your trip. That way it's ready to go for the next one and you've got fresh oil sitting there. Because ultimately what happens is the water and oil will separate when it sits. I'm used to boat motors, right? So you see a lowering unit that leaks, you'll see you take the plug out and just water comes out of it if it's had water in the oil. So usually I'll service it, that type of stuff. Any gear case, when I'm done with it, I'll service it, you know, when I'm done using it and it's gonna sit for a while, I'll do it after the trip or after the use.
Yeah, and that's a great idea, and I actually never really thought about it. You know,
Occasionally I'm right.
2 dummies is better than 1 dummy.
Yeah.
So my toolkit is constantly evolving. You know, I'm constantly adding or taking away tools based on, you know, my experience and what I think I need to have. The good thing is, if you're on the road, you can always buy more stuff.
We've done that before. I've done that before.
Show the very basic stuff that we bring. Always bring your Haynes manual, number 1. These, you got these from Home Depot, and
they're Chinese Craftsman, they're fine. Yeah, and the thing with these, I mean, really, you know, I don't use this a lot in the garage. I mean, you know, this type of stuff, but it is nice if you grab and take them because it does have a screwdriver kit in with it.
Yeah.
Pretty compact.
Yeah, I love these little things.
And they work fine for what they are.
Another thing that I bring, now Harbor Freight sells these. This is a standalone air compressor, clips onto your battery, has a hose attachment here. In addition to my tire plug kit, which I never leave home without. I always have a tire plug kit, and make sure you buy fresh cement. So fresh tire plug kit, standalone air compressor. I drive a lot of washboard roads. If you're airing down your tires a lot, I found this really cool air down kit. You just screw these onto your Schrader valve on your tires. Screw one of these onto each tire, and it auto deflates down to whatever I've got it set at, usually around 20 PSI or so. So that's really cool. And then airing up's really quick with one of these guys. So always bring that stuff. I want to say, don't ever rely on your factory tire changing kit. Those little scissor jacks are not the business. Get yourself a decent bottle jack. I always carry a 4-way. And before I leave on a trip, I'll make sure that I can get my lugs off with this 4-way. Just get you one.
Get yourself a decent wrench.
They're like 20 bucks.
Yep.
So that's some of the gear I bring. I also bring like kind of basic stuff you'd always have in your toolbox at home, like a pair of pliers, pair of vice grips, some needle nose. I started bringing like some wire crimpers. I always bring some electrical tape.
Well, the camera just overheated, so probably not. The camera just overheated. The camera's too hot. So for those that think we just make this stuff up to bash GoPro, we really don't. It's laughable. This was a half an hour in, I guess, that made it longer than it usually did.
Yeah.
And it's actually pretty cool out here. I mean, it's cooler than it normally is. It's probably mid-80s, I'd say.
Yeah.
Too much for GoPro. We're running a medium mod, holding it out on a stick.
These are for extreme sports.
It's great. So yeah, it's real extreme. So GoPro just overheated.
Extreme sports GoPro. Thanks. Oh,
I just heard no from Andrew. I'm gonna get this shit on film. What we got here? Oh shit! How'd you not hear that? Oh.
that thing is toast, huh?
How'd you? Well, it's made it how long? Maybe just drive out there with it. Oh, shit.
Good Lord. That's sketchy.
That sucks. So we got our cameras set back up. You've had some developments here.
I figured I'd go ahead and crawl under and lube up the driveline. Well, my center support bearing completely toasted. Disintegrated.
So what's your plan with this? What are you gonna do?
So if I was out in the middle of nowhere, you know, I could probably drive into an auto zone and, you know.
We were gonna fix it. We've looked into it. The part's available. We could go down the street to AutoZone and get it right.
We looked into fixing it here, but I'm kind of lazy.
You got a guy.
Called up a guy, he's gonna get me in. I'm supposed to leave tomorrow morning. He's going to try to get me in before the end of the day, and he's going to replace it for me. I mean, me and you could probably tackle it, but you know how that goes.
Yeah, the reality is this guy works on Toyotas, I think, you know, offers stuff all the time.
Basically, me and Brock would fight with it for 5 hours.
We'd be in here till midnight probably. Yeah. When I look at the book, that I say it'd probably take a couple hours, and now I know enough to know, well, if I say a couple hours, that means till midnight. So that's why you do this stuff. And to add to what he said, you either crawl under your own vehicle, or if you don't have time, have someone under it if you're going to go on a long trip like this. I have a Toyota dealership that I actually like to use. If I'm going somewhere, you know, I'll have them do an oil change. They usually crawl under and do a multi-point inspection anyways, because they want you to spend money. But if you tell them you're going on a trip, hey, you know, look, see if it needs anything, because this is the stuff that, keeps you from getting stranded, right? If you really want to be prepared, you'd probably do it like a week before this.
Yeah, like don't do it the day before you leave.
Might be a good idea.
Anyway, point is, you can take old vehicles on trips like this. I prefer an old vehicle to a new one. But, you know, you gotta work on them sometimes. Things get old and they blow out and you gotta replace them, and that's just part of the game.
And hopefully we've showed you guys, or Andrew has, some of the stuff to look for. I think we've had a good example that wasn't scripted of why you do this stuff. And if you have anything you think we left out, or, you know, please comment. If you think we left stuff out, something he doesn't take that he should have taken, or if, you know, we're just complete idiots and this shows why you shouldn't drive old cars out there, you know,
I'm always looking for some new tools to buy, guys. So feel free to comment. If you want to see any more videos on this Tacoma or the camper setup, you know, say so in the comments. I feel like that's kind of a whole nother channel. I don't feel like this is...
Maybe the next carrier bearing you'll do yourself and video it.
No, I don't think so. I'm lazy. Are we done?
That's probably it, yeah.
Are we done?
That's probably it.
Off to the mechanic.
You have fun.
Still over here.
Nope. Wow. That's wild.